Well, hours after the attack on Kuje Prison in the Federal Capital Territory, President Muhammadu Buhari visited the correctional center, expressing his disappointment over the intelligence system and utilities in the facility. About 879 inmates have escaped from the medium security correctional facility, according to reports. But as at the last check, 443 of them have been recaptured. Although the correctional center is built to house 800 inmates, the Minister of Defense, Bashir Magashi, says at least 994 persons were in custody at the time of the attack. But the minister also says all 64 members of the Boko Haram terrorists fled the facility when gunmen stormed the prison with explosions and gunshots. TVC News defense correspondent Sifon Essien tells us more.
The custodial center in Kuje is swarming with security operatives in the aftermath of the Tuesday night attack by gunmen. Fleeing inmates are being recaptured.
The operatives of these correctional facilities are apprehending those who fled. We've seen several trucks with inmates, being conveyed back into the facility that has been damaged.
As at Wednesday, the Correctional Service said 443 escapees were recaptured. In a statement, the spokesman for the service said 4 inmates lost their lives during the attack, while 16 others sustained injuries.
Most likely they are Boko Haram.
Moments after a visit to the damaged facility by the Minister of Defense, the Inspector General of Police, and the Commandant General of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, presidential security operatives took over the center, an indication the president would visit. And true to expectation, President Buhari arrived at the medium security custodial center in company of senior government officials. He was given a tour of the facility, further revealing the level of damage done by the attackers. The president left without a word to journalists. The attack is the worst yet on the custodial center established in 1989 to hold 800 inmates. Sifon Essien, TVC News, Abuja.
Joining us now via Zoom is the retired controller of corrections, I should say. He's also a former National Public Relations Officer of the Nigerian Correctional Service. Francis Enobore, thank you very much for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, why do you think this jailbreak took place?
Thank you once again for allowing me to share with Nigerians some of these developments. It's quite sad, there's no doubt about that. It's a development that should be of great concern to every Nigerian. Why it may be too early to put a finger to the remote or immediate causes of the unfortunate development in the medium security custodial center in Kuje. I like to say that in recent past, we've had this unfortunate invasion of our custodial centers by armed, non-state elements. One thing that stands out, which I must say, is failure of intelligence to nip these attacks in the bud. There's no doubt that it is far cheaper, safer, and easier to contain these attacks using credible intelligence. The question we keep asking ourselves is, how much of sensitization has the state made for members of the public to co-own custodial facilities in their domain. How do they see custodial centers? Is it a place established to keep unfortunate members of the public, or a place that is set aside to isolate those that do not have the capacity to live in a civilized manner with others, with a possible a chance of reforming and reconstructing their psyche, and then return them in due time to the society better citizen? You see, the perception matters a lot. Because it's difficult to believe that an invasion of that magnitude would happen in a community, not in a center, not established in one isolated forest. In a place where we have members of society. The question you ask yourself is, the invaders procured logistics. There were movements, there were discussions. And for you to carry out such high-level invasion, there's no way you escape leaving a trail, doing something that is unusual. Movements and procurements that are unusual, that members of the public will pick and then process and pass to credible platform. Beyond the state-established security, intelligence gathering network, we see it in other clients. Members of the society actively get themselves involved in processing intelligence and passing such to appropriate quarters to nip criminality in the bud. I think we need to look deeper into the way we process, generate intelligence and then process say. Because before these are not kinetic measures, which I strongly believe.
All right.
We, address the problem much easier and better.
Mr. Enobore, I mean, it shows, I believe, that the invaders of these correctional centers absolutely did not hash their plans in isolation. I want to think that this invasion, this attack was carried out in connivance with some of your former colleagues, prison officials. Isn't that possible? Mr. Francis, I don't know if we still have you with us. We do not have your audio connection. I hope we can have you back, and so you can.
Okay, we understand that we'll try to reconnect with
Mr.
him.
Francis.
Now, of course, earlier on, we did allude to that possibility that, and he even said so in his initial remarks, that clearly there was a breach. There was a security breach. How, if indeed, the fact that there were intelligence reports of an impending attack at correctional centers, as at this time yesterday, we even had, people saying that on record. So I remember I asked our TVC correspondent who was keeping watch for us at the Kuje Prison, how, from what he could see at the time before the statements from the officials, how did that reflect somehow in this kind of attack that he could see and was giving us reports on? And he said, well, these are part of the questions. If indeed there were reports that there could be an attack, why didn't we see any kind of response to match the kind of attack that this terrorists gave? And again, this is not the first time. I also said that this is not the first time. And that was the question we also asked him earlier. This is not the first time that we'll be having this. Shouldn't we, what lessons have we learned? What lessons have we learned to forestall attacks, future attacks on correctional facilities?
I think between 2020, October 2020, and now we've seen almost maybe 15 jailbreaks. I mean, I stand to be corrected because I know that in October 2020, we saw very massive jailbreaks in Edo State, and I think in Ondo State.
There was also kind of an arrest here in Lagos,
of course,
at the Kuje Prison.
The Kuje prisons as well. Those invaders
South
also stormed that as well. Very recently, we also had the Abolongo Correctional Service.
All right, so Francis Enobore, you're welcome. Kelly was asking a question earlier.
Yes. So Francis, good to have you back. I was just asking just a moment ago that these invaders of these correctional centers, it looks like they always do hatch their plans. They can't just hatch their plans in isolation. I was asking, isn't it possible that some of your former colleagues, prison officials, could be fingered here? It does appear that there is some sort of connivance between prison officials and these invaders of prisons in very recent times.
I very much doubt if you can trace this level of attacks to connivance between the invaders and the correctional officers, whether serving or retired. We are not talking about one or two persons escaping from custody. We are not talking about the group of protesters coming around to break and remove one or two. But we are talking of massive invasion by armed men, people that are armed with military-grade weapons. There is no absolutism in life. You cannot say that there will not be element of support from any quarter. But to a very large extent, I have come to disbelieve that notion that this is a product of connivance between some staff and the invaders. If you see the kind of weapons they deploy when coming for the attack, you will understand that it goes beyond what one or two persons can come together to plan. In fact, before I went off the connection via Zoom, I was sharing that I find it extremely hard to believe that such invasion will take place without leaving a trail by the planners. Because logistics will be procured and there will be movement, there will be discussion, there will be unusual, congregation here and there. And these are things that are happening within environment that people live. So the question you ask is, what kind of impression do they have? I'm talking about members of the public now of custodial centers. Is it what they feel they can co-own? They see as part of the government establishment established in their own interest, or they just see it as a country, a place where you keep unfortunate people to be punished. So impression matters, and I want to believe too that until we progress to the level that the ordinary man on the street will see something unusual and have the confidence to go to the nearest security post to lay such observation, we may keep running in a circle. Because yes, it is. Let me
also ask you, having served previously as a controller of corrections, isn't it also a kind of security breach, as have been observed, clumping together alleged terrorists in the nature of Boko Haram? We understand they were all together as against what some have proffered, security experts proffering that they ought to have been scattered around the various correctional facilities in the country. But here we see dozens of them clustered in one place. Isn't that even a security breach in itself?
I don't believe that. Anybody can sit in the comfort of his room to provide a solution to cast aspersion on any agency. The question you first of all ask the person that is coming up with that theory is, how many violent extremist offenders do we have in the country? Two, how many of them...
Are you saying there are not many? Are you saying extremists in the country are not many?
Just a minute. What I'm trying to say is, when you have large number of violent extremist offenders that you need to manage, remember that they are not given to you to lock and keep and throw the key away. Some of them are still undergoing court trial, and you need to keep them in a place that is nearest to the courts that are attending to their cases. Otherwise, if you take someone, for instance, that is attending a court in Abuja here, to worry, how do you fund the logistics of bringing the person anytime the case is stated for hearing? And in any case, who told you that some of those locations you are saying they should have been scattered? We don't have such elements in some of those locations. So let us address the issue as it's supposed to be. And the starting point, like I said, is to work more on intelligence gathering, so that we are able to, we see ourselves meeting these plans in the board rather than they attend to them. We need to rejig our intelligence network and urgently get members of the public involved. Beyond,
it looks like it is not the problem of intelligence here, because I understand that there was actionable intelligence that was not acted upon. But then I want to ask you this question. It was said that 24 hours to the raid, that soldiers were deployed from there. They take us through the process of deployment and replacement of soldiers in a security institution like that of Kuje.
yes,
And what might have gone wrong?
honestly, I'm not aware of that information that soldiers were withdrawn 24 hours to the time of invasion. Honestly, I'm not aware of such development. And on the intelligence that actionable intelligence was available before the invasion, I still do not. I don't have that information with me, so I may not be able to speak on that. That's the.
Oh,
Well,
no.
there were
Right.
Yes. Pieces of information to show that soldiers were actually deployed. Another batch was being brought in. We don't know the space between these replacements and so on, and that there was actionable intelligence that there were going to be raids.
That's what I'm saying. Anyone that is that has a modicum of idea about deployment of security personnel to handle a bit will know that you don't ask people on ground to leave, that you are expecting people to come and take over. It's right on the spot that those that are taking over will come, hand over, take over the beat from the people on ground, and then so there's usually no gap in dismantling a beat and then taking over a beat. That much I know. But that the soldiers were deployed out of the place a couple of hours before the invasion, I don't have that information, honestly, and I very much doubt if there is any merit in that story.
No, there is merit. It's a fact. We just want you to comment on it. That's all. We just want you to comment on it. Well, how does it happen when you were serving? What was the process? When some soldiers are replacing others, do they replace them immediately, or do they spend some time trying to get them to familiarize themselves with what is going on? In which case, they will have double the number of soldiers at a particular time, because you have those who are coming in and those who are leaving there at the same time, familiarizing themselves with the ropes.
Yes. In my time, and as it has always been, whether soldiers, NSCDC, police, mounting duty on a particular beat has a process. If you are deployed to take over the beat, you go to the beat and then sign
the handing over note. The person to hand over the bid to you will give you a brief. If there was any incident, is there you will pick the whatever information they are going to give you. And then you check whatever you are taking over, and then you sign takeover note. The people dismantling will leave. It is not, you don't do it by proxy, and you don't leave any gap while doing it. So for this incident we are talking about, that the set of soldiers were asked to leave, then others should come, and which ordinarily it said that there was a gap created in time of taking over and handing over. I don't have that information, and I don't believe it's true.
Yes, Mr. Francis, let me quickly put in some questions across to you as regards the state of our facilities across the country at this time. I understand this is one of the major problems we're also facing. What's the state of our correctional centers? The Kuje Prison, for instance, I understand was built in 1955 for an accommodation of 800 inmates. Now it has more than 4 times of that number. I'm sure this is the case across board. In fact, very recently, Nigeria ranked 49th out of a list of 209 countries in the World Prison Brief published by the University of London's Institute of Crime and Justice Policy Research. So I wonder, is this also a major contributor to the fact that we have loopholes in these jailbreaks we've seen very recently?
Well, there's no doubt that most of our custodial centers, particularly those established in urban centers, are congested. It's already in the public domain, the state of the congestion level of these facilities. I think in response to that, let us be fair with the government, at least on this issue. In response to that, a number of high-capacity custodial centers were initiated. We have the 3,000 capacity custodial center in Jangoza in Kano. We have another one in FCT, also 3,000 capacity custodial center, ultramodern custodial center. We have another one coming up in Bori in River State. Ditto other 3 geopolitical zones across the country. The concept is to ensure that, number one, you do not only increase the fortification of the custodial center, but you bridge the gap in conveying offenders from custodial center to court, because everything is integrated, both the courtrooms, reformation and rehabilitation centers, religious centers, drug rehabilitation centers, and all of that. So these infrastructure, they are ongoing. Therefore, the existing ones, when most of these custodial centers were established several years back, they were all in isolated areas. But over time, private developers started encroaching into the available land around the custodial centers, to the extent that most of our centers now are literally in a fully urbanized environment. Creating buffer zone, which will ordinarily give anyone that is on duty, that is on guard duty, enough time to profile an intruder, has become a problem. Because that in 2019, the Nigerian Correctional Service Act came on board. Section 9, subsection 3 in that act particularly addresses this issue of establishing a buffer zone of not less than 100 meters radius around a custodial center. The reason behind this is to give someone on guard duty enough time to assess whoever is approaching the custodial center. But sadly, what we have today is such that you have private developers all around the place. So someone that is coming to harm you or harm the consider center will just be by your side, pretending to be well, just one of the local dwellers. And then the havoc is right.
Okay, retired Controller of Corrections and former National Public Relations Officer of the Nigeria Corrections Service, Francis Enobore, we thank you very much for your contributions on TVC Breakfast at this time. We've run out of time and cannot continue our conversation any further. We thank you very much for joining us all the same.